It's really the whole 10th chapter, and so I would encourage you to read the full chapter as part of your quiet time, your study time. I'm going to only read the first 8 verses as far as what we're going to look at today. We'll continue on next Sunday because I believe in this chapter there are great, deep and abiding truths that we need to consider as children of God. But for our time this morning, let me read verses 1 through 8 of Acts chapter 10. This is the third time that Peter will use the keys given to him by our Lord in accordance with what he is told in Matthew chapter 16, where Jesus says unto them, I've given you the keys, and whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, whatever you loose on earth will be loose in heaven. Here we have recorded, and I'm reading from the New King James Version, it says, there was a certain man in Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of what was called the Italian regiment, a devout man, and one who feared God with all his household, who gave alms generously to the people, and prayed to God always about the 9th hour of the day. He saw clearly in a vision an angel of God coming in and saying to him, Cornelius. And when he observed him, he was afraid and said, what is it, Lord? So he said to him, your prayers and your alms have come up for a memorial before God. Now send men to Joppa and send for Simon, whose surname is Peter. He is lodging with Simon, a tanner, whose house is by the sea. He will tell you what you must do. And when the angel who spoke to him had departed, Cornelius called 2 of his household servants and a devout soldier from among those who waited on him continually. So when he had explained all these things to them, he sent them to Joppa. If you would allow me for a few minutes, I want to speak from this thought, look to God. Look to God. Isaiah was commissioned, the prophet Isaiah was commissioned by God to record events that would not occur for some 700 years. Not only did he tell in that which he recorded of the coming of Christ, but he spoke of his sacrifice for man's sin. In chapter 45 and verse 22, he recorded the words of God when he said, look to me and be saved. Isaiah ministered during a time very much like today. A time when people were looking for deliverance from everywhere except God. Amen. Isaiah's message to them and my message to us today is to look to God. Amen. Because one of the things that is prevalent in my mind today, and that is the same message that God had to share with them then is the message he wants to share with us now. Amen. Amen. The faces may have changed, the names may have changed, the culture may have changed, society may have changed. There may be new technological advances But I'm glad to report today that this message is just as good today as it was back then.
Amen.
We need to be reminded today, my dears in Christ, that we need to look to God. That the sinner needs to look to God for salvation.
Come on now.
The saint needs to look to God for sustaining.
All right.
Because it is only in God that we can find deliverance, true salvation.
Yes, Lord.
We can only find that in God. And I'm glad to report today that God and what He wants to do in and through us, the salvation that He offers is not salvation for a day.
Come on now. Hey.
He does not offer salvation for a day. He does not offer salvation for a week, month, or year. But how many of you know here today He offers salvation for eternity? We got to help people to understand that the events of today where we are confronting a virus is not as bad as it can get. I would admit to you it is concerning. I would admit to you that it is alarming. I would admit to you that it's devastating, that individuals are losing their lives from this virus, but that is not the worst it can get. Because worse than losing your life from a virus is losing your soul from sin.
Yes, sir.
It is that message that comprises our text for today. It is the message given by Christ to us, His followers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It is a message that they were commanded to give to all mankind, both Jew and Gentile. We learn in Acts chapter 2, Peter is held responsible for preaching this message to the Jew. We learn in chapter 8 that the gospel has spread, and he preaches or he confirms the message that was preached by Philip to the Samaritans. And here in chapter 10 of Acts, we learn that he has been given the responsibility of taking this message to the Gentiles. So that both Jew and Gentile can hear the great news of the gospel of Jesus Christ and be saved. It is a message of salvation. It is a message of life. It is a message of hope. It is a message of joy. It is a message of love. And yes, it is a message of peace.
Yes, Lord.
It is a message that this world needs to hear today.
Amen. Amen.
Why is this message so important? Why has Christ given us the responsibility of preaching the same message that Peter preached, that the same message that Isaiah was responsible for sharing with the Jews back then? 3 things I want to share with you. We may not get through them all, but let us begin. First of all, I want us to consider that it is a good message for us to share today, that we should look to God, firstly because of the desire of God's heart. The desire of God's heart. Cornelius had that which would appear to be the makings of a good life.
Yes, yes.
He had that which would appear to be the makings of a good life. He had position. He was a centurion. He had power. He commanded 100 men. He even had prosperity. Because if you look at verse 7 talked about his household servants. His household servants. And based upon what many consider to be a good life today, that's the trifecta.
Come on, preacher.
Got position.
That's it. Power.
Got power. Got prosperity. But sadly, many who have position, who have power, who have prosperity, like Cornelius, they don't have peace. They don't have peace. When you consider what Warren Wiersbe said, Warren Wiersbe said he was devout, he was honest, he was generous, he was sincere, but he wasn't saved. All these qualities are good to have. And one may possess them and still not be saved.
Yes, sir.
And with all that Cornelius had, the appearance that I get from reading the scripture is that there was still emptiness in Cornelius' heart.
My Lord, my Lord.
I see in Cornelius a desire to know the true God. Here you have a Gentile seeking the God of the Jews. Here you have one who had power, continuing to look for that which superseded his power. Here you have one who had position, who is not satisfied in just having position or just having prosperity. Bible does declare, what does it profit a person if he should gain the whole world and lose his own soul? And I want to grant to you, my dears, today, as we're looking at the situation that our nation and our world are facing, I would grant you that some are asking themselves that question.
Yes, right. All right.
You've heard it say before that riches can buy you some things, but there are other things that riches can't buy.
All right now.
Amen. I see this commercial every now and then about these nice mattresses. Amen. They got mattresses you can set the number on. Amen. Your wife can have her mattress and set the number that's comfortable for her. You can have your mattress and you can set the number that's comfortable for you. You may like a firm mattress, or you might like a mattress that's not so firm. But how many of you know today that you can buy one of these expensive mattresses and still not get any sleep? You not get a wink of sleep. And when you know the Lord, you can lay down on the floor. Sleep all night. Cornelius had all these things, and yet you sense within him there's a longing for a relationship with the true God. And so what happens in this text, the Bible tells us that the angel commands this devout, honest, and generous, sincere person to send for Peter, who was staying in Joppa. For I believe, had Cornelius' relationship with God been whole, had it been whole, had it been right in the way that God desires a relationship, then he would have no reason to send for Peter.
All right.
But here the angel commands him to send for Peter. He commands him to send for Peter. He commands him to send for Peter. Peter, on the other hand, who knows of the grace of God, who knows of the mercy of God, who knows of the forgiveness that God will give to those who believe and receive him, is 30 miles away. Totally, not having a knowledge of that which was going on in the heart and in the life of Cornelius.
All right.
The Bible says that he is told to send for Peter, the man of God, who would come and bring to him the word of God.
Word of God.
Well, what I find so interesting as this text opens is the fact that it really reveals the heart of God. I find in this text that it reveals to us the heart of God as it relates to someone who is yet to come into a relationship with him. And what it tells me, and what this 10th chapter tells me, is that just like God works in the heart of the saint, in order for us to serve him, that God works in the heart of sinners in order to bring them to him. In fact, isn't that not what he did for you?
Yes. Thank you, Lord.
Yes, sir.
Is that not what he did for me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I'm so glad that the Lord didn't give up on me, that the Lord, amen, didn't give up on me. Amen, because you know what? Can I be honest with you this morning? When I was young and didn't know anything, I actually thought I was all right because my daddy was a pastor.
All right. Amen. My Lord, my Lord.
But I found out through the word of God, by the Spirit of God, just because your daddy's saved, that don't mean you saved.
Amen.
Just because your daddy knows me, that says nothing about your relationship. Now, you have the capacity to know me because your father preaches the word, but you got to know me for yourself.
Come on, preacher.
Amen. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You got to know me for yourself. It is in the heart of God that everyone be saved.
Everyone. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Everyone we saved. Not just good men, bad men.
That's right. Amen.
Not just righteous men, unrighteous men.
Yes, sir.
Not just honest men, dishonest men. Not just generous men, but greedy men as well.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
Because how many of you know today that he's got power to save everybody? I want to add to this message in the day and the time in which we live, amen, because as much as we need doctors
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
we
sir.
need
to be able to give us an answer to this
Come on,
coronavirus,
preacher.
Yes,
as much as we need
Yeah.
scientists
All right now.
to research the best way to deal with the coronavirus, as much as we need government to make sure the resources in place to deal with the coronavirus, we need God.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Lord.
Because I've come to this self-conclusion. Even if coronavirus doesn't take me out of here, something else will. It may be sickness, it may be a car accident, it may be old age. But according to the word of God, the wages of sin is death. It doesn't say it was death, it is death. How many of you know what be today? That there are folks still dying. And the question is, where will you lift up your eyes when you breathe your last?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I've said it before and I will say it again. What a wonderful time to be a child of God.
Yes, sir.
Because for those who are looking for an answer, or I'm glad to report we have the answer. And his name is Jesus.
Yes, sir.
And his desire, we see as it relates to this man named Cornelius. Look what it says in the text.
Come on, preacher.
There's a certain man of Caesarea called Cornelius, a centurion of what was called the Italian regiment, a devout man, and one who feared God. On the surface, it would appear that everything is right.
Everything.
He gave alms. In fact, if you really look at it, Cornelius does more than some church folks do.
Come on now. All right now.
Verse 2 says that he prayed to God always. But in verse 3 says that in the ninth hour of the day, he saw clearly in a vision an angel of God coming in and saying to him, Cornelius. And when he observed him, he was afraid and said, What is it, Lord? So he said to him, Your prayers and your alms have come up for a memorial before God. God has acknowledged the fact that you've been praying and that you've been giving. Well, the word that keeps, or the phrase that keeps coming in my mind over and over again is that Cornelius, as good as you are, is not good enough.
All right now.
It's not good enough.
Not good enough.
Because he is told to send for Peter. You see the desire of God's heart in that he would say to this man who was devout, who was just, who feared God, who gave of his prosperity, that there's something you are missing.
Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord.
And as much as I love you, and I don't want you to miss out thinking that your goodness is good enough, this is what you need to do. You need to send to Joppa for a man by the name of Peter.
Yeah.
The desire of God's house. Next one I want to deal with briefly, the direction of God's hand, because he tells him what to do. He says, send to Joppa, about 30 miles away, and ask for a man by the name of Peter. Now watch this. We find in his directions some specifics. He gives him a specific place, and he gives him a specific person. That's key here, y'all. Because notice here, he says not only go to Joppa, but he tells him where his house is.
Amen.
He says he is lodging with Simon, verse 6, a tanner whose house is by the sea.
Come on now.
He gives him a specific location as to where to go, but he also gives him a specific person as to who to ask for. Don't miss the point that Simon, Peter, is staying with Simon the tanner.
All right.
Had he not told him Simon Peter,
Come on,
Come on
preacher.
now.
he could have gone looking for Simon the tanner,
All right.
and he would have gotten the wrong Simon.
He's lodging with Simon.
God is so good, y'all.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean God is so good? Listen, in his love, God not only knows how to get our attention,
Yeah.
but God knows how to direct us where we need to be in order to receive the blessing he has in store for us.
Amen. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, he not only knows how to get out, you see, if you know, I go back to the corner, a lot of folks are paying a little more attention now.
Come on now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, a lot of folks are paying a little more attention now. God knows how to get our attention. Now, someone asked me, if God send this virus, I don't know.
All right. That's right.
I don't know.
Amen.
But I know this, because of the fact that he is all powerful, if he didn't send it, he has to allow it. And had God wanted to, he could have stopped it at the door. And so you ain't gonna get in here. But God most definitely has had to allow it.
Amen.
And once again, I believe it shows the love of God. You see, we look at things like this, and we become anxious and worried and nervous, and we don't allow God to be God.
Yes, man.
Come on now. Come on.
Nothing.
Can I tell you about Bertha Thomas?
Yeah, come on, preacher.
As much as Bertha Thomas loved me, sometimes she knew I needed a whoop.
Amen.
All right.
Now, can I stand up here and tell you I wanted a whooping?
Amen.
I don't think there's any child would say I want a whooping. Well, she had enough godly wisdom to know that there were times I needed what I didn't want.
Amen.
And God knows.
He knows.
Listen, God knows how to bring America to his knees.
Say that.
God knows how to bring the world to his knees.
Yes.
God knows how to bring Joseph to his knees.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, Lord.
Yes.
He can do it. Yes, Lord. He can.
I see all this in here, y'all. Now, the way that God does it, listen, I've got to let him be God.
Amen.
Reverend Dowd just said this morning, what he may have to do for somebody, he may have to do different for somebody else.
Amen.
One person may listen, whereas another person may be hard-hearted and say, you know what, I don't care what you do, I'm not going to obey. In fact, if you turn one chapter over, chapter 9 of the book of Acts, you'll find one of those hard-hearted persons that God had to knock off his horse in order to save him. And in love, he does that for us. And he directs Cornelius as to what to do. He directs Cornelius as to what to do. Notice he sends Cornelius an angel.
Yes, yes.
I like what Ron Wright says. An angel is a messenger of God, but he did not send this angel with the gospel message. Because God has left that responsibility in the hands of the redeemed. For those of us who've been saved, God has left us and given us the responsibility of telling somebody else as to how they can be saved. Because you know what? We got saved.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. Listen, we can tell somebody else about God's love because we've received God's love.
Yeah.
We can tell somebody else about how they can be forgiven because of the fact that we received the forgiveness of God. And once again, God is trying to save us. He's trying to deliver us. And I'm saying it in a general sense. He's trying to get our attention so that he can save folks who don't realize they need to be saved.
All right.
Yes, Lord.
And what better way to do that than to do that through others who have been saved.
Yes, Lord.
Who have been saved. These scriptures give us insight into the Spirit's working in the heart and life of an unbeliever to bring him to salvation.
Yes.
Jesus said, no one can come to me except the Father who sent me draw him. The key to understanding the word draw as Jesus stated it is that Jesus does not draw by force, but he draws by love.
Yeah.
He draws by love. He draws by love.
Jesus draws.
Think of other religions.
By love.
They draw by force.
Come on, preacher. Make it plain.
Think of other religions that draw by fear.
Uh-huh.
In contrast to Jesus, who draws by love. You think of other religions where you have to do something
That's right.
in order to be right with God. But it is only in Christianity where God did something
Come on
in order for
now.
us to be right with Him.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
In
yes.
order for us to be right with Him. And here it is, we see the Spirit of God working on the heart of this soldier. Now, I've never been in the military. I've never held an office, a position that required me to exert authority over someone in the sense of what a soldier would do. But when I think about a soldier, I think about a person who is regimented in their lifestyle, who always stands at the ready, and who understands that at any moment they have to fight. And here it is, Cornelius, who has responsibility over 100 men, he would understand that he has responsibility to make sure that those men who are under his authority are ready to fight.
Yes.
And yet you see in Cornelius a sensitivity to God.
Yes.
In that he's devout, he fears or reverences God. He gives alms, he is praying continuously. There's only God in heaven can work in the heart of an individual to bring them to the realization of their need for him.
Yes, Lord.
That's why we talk about the fact that our responsibility is simply to give or to share the message. We can't save anybody.
That's right.
In fact, if you're truly sold, you can't save yourself.
That's right.
But it's Jesus Christ and Him alone that has saved us.
Yes.
And then I'm going to point out one more thing, and then we'll pick this up next week. Once again, dealing with the heart of Cornelius and what the Lord is doing in his heart to bring him to the understanding and the awareness of the fact that he needs to be saved, that his goodness is not good enough, that his devoutness is not good enough, that his giving of his wealth is not good enough. Because you have many who think that I'm a good person, that's good enough. But this message tells us that good is not good enough.
That's right. That's right.
The text tells us that when those men that Cornelius sends to Peter get there, they make the statement to Peter that Cornelius had been warned by God. That he had been warned by God. And that word warning kept resonating in my mind. Why would he warn him? Why would he warn him unless he was trying to relate to Cornelius that your goodness is not good enough?
All right.
In their statement to Peter when he arrived at Simon's house They stated Cornelius had been warned by God to send for him. To be warned means to be directed or warned by God or by divine revelation. It means to receive a vision. It means to receive a messenger. It means that God in some way is trying to get a message to someone that there's an aspect of their life that is not right with God. And so why would God warn him unless his goodness was not good enough? He was devout, but that wasn't good enough. He reverenced God, but that wasn't good enough. He was just, but that wasn't good enough. It even says that he had a good report among others, but yet that was not good enough. In fact, the Bible tells us that there is nothing in us that is good enough to make us right with God. And as much as we who have been saved know that, most certainly we have a responsibility to share with others that your goodness is not good enough with God. Well, how is it that one say? Well, Paul tells us this in Ephesians 2:8-9. He says, "For by grace you have been saved." It's not your goodness, it's God's goodness.
Amen.
It's God's goodness that you have been saved by grace, by God's unmerited favor, by God giving you what you don't deserve. He says you have been saved. And I don't know how you feel about it. I'm glad that God has given me what I don't deserve. For it is by his grace that he has saved us. For by grace you have been saved through faith. And that not of yourself, it is a gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. We have been saved by the grace of God. And guess what? Just like I'm saved by his grace and you're saved by his grace, guess what? That's how other folks are going to be saved. Because of God's grace, because of God's goodness. Because of the fact that God has a desire to save everybody. Not just somebody, but everybody. Whether they are good or bad, whether they fear him or don't fear him, whether they're just or unjust, whether they are devout or they're not devout. He has the power to save everybody. He wants to save everybody. And these are the keys that God will give and has given to Peter, and yes, that have been passed down to us, that you and I have been called to proclaim the same message that Isaiah spoke of, that Peter spoke of, that we're to speak of in this dark and dying world, that we're to look to God. Because God and God alone can save. God and God alone can save.
Yes.
And guess what? He will save all who call upon him. Isn't that good news, my brothers and sisters? And so in this time of turmoil,
Thank you, Lord.
in this time of turmoil, I was talking to my wife the other day, and you come on, get ready to be quiet. But I need you to hear me. I need you to hear me today, because I believe, sadly, we are like what Amos talked about, in that we've gotten at ease in Zion.
Come on now.
We're sitting on beds of comfort when hell is broken out all around us. And we have a responsibility to those who don't know the Lord to share the good news of Jesus Christ. They in your family, they in my family. They live on your block, they live on my block. You work with them, I work with them. We have a responsibility to share with them the good news of Jesus Christ. I'm sharing this with my wife. If the world will go this mad over one virus, imagine what would happen if two viruses popped up. And understand what the Word of God is saying is, the Word of God says it's going to get worse. Shelves are empty because of one virus. One virus. I mean, normally when we go to the grocery store, we choose what we're going to eat on Sunday. Yesterday, our food chose us. What do you mean, Reverend? Your food chose you? I had to get whatever was there. All the ground beef was gone. The chicken was gone. Most of the pork was gone. You know I shouldn't be eating it. Most of the pork was gone. We couldn't choose our dinner. Our dinner chose us. You know our dinner chose us? Like, I'm still here. Either get me or go to the restaurant. But I done chose us today. We having pork chops and cabbage. That's all I can find. If they ain't open the door. But look at the response of people. Because of one virus and one skin, I'm not trying to make light of it. It's serious. We should do what we've been told to do. But imagine when it gets worse. And worse. And worse. And worse. Like Reverend Dodd was saying this morning, we got to go back to growing our own food. And if we ain't careful, they'll come steal our food before we get the house. But what a wonderful time it is to be a believer.
Yes, Lord. Amen.
I've kept you far too long. Dear Lord, we thank you for your word.
Thank you, Lord.
Dear Lord, we help us, Lord, to be in the right position with the sensitivity of your heart.
Yes.
With a message that you've given us, Lord, that has not changed in all of this time.
Yes, Lord.
In fact, it is as old as when you stepped out on nothing and said, let there be. Because your word tells us that before the foundation of the world, you had determined to send your son, Jesus Christ, to die for our sins. And so really, you sent the remedy for sin even before sin entered the world.
Yes.
Dear Lord, and really, if we wanna just lay it out flat, dear Lord, really, we can even say the reason for the virus is because of sin. Because when Adam sinned in the garden, the Bible says that sin flooded the whole world. That even those who were born after Adam were born into a world of sin. But I'm so grateful to you, dear Lord, because you said that even though the wages of sin is death, the gift of God, not something we can pay for. We can't pay for it with our goodness. We cannot pay for it with our righteousness. We can only receive the gift. And we can receive the righteousness of God by faith in Jesus Christ. And so what a wonderful time to know Jesus Christ, and what a wonderful time to be able to share with someone else the good news that they can be saved, not for a day, not for a week, month, or year, but they can be saved for eternity by placing their faith in Jesus Christ. Now, Lord, we're going to do what the doctors tell us to do. We're going to do and follow the lead of the scientists, and Lord, we're gonna be wise as serpents and as harmless as doves, and exercise good judgment, dear Lord, as it relates to the situation, dear Lord. But we don't want to ever take our eyes off you, dear Lord. Amen. We want to be like the psalmist says, I will look into the hills from which cometh my help. My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. Dear Lord, help us to stand for you. Help us to live for you, dear Lord. Help us, dear Lord, to speak for you. Help us, dear Lord, to represent you in all that we say and do. Dear Lord, so that you might be glorified in all things, and that your will might be accomplished in bringing many souls unto your own self. Give us the strength we need. Give us the courage we need to stand for you. The Puritan just got through singing, and the young adult just got through singing. Stand. Stand. When friends are alone, stand. When we're all alone, stand.
Stand.
Even when we have to stand by ourselves, we want to be able to stand.
Yes, Lord.
We pray this in Jesus' name.